You have two characters, Brains and Brawn, and you have this gimmick, the machine, and you have a case of the week that can be solved at the end of an hour. And in that sense, it's very much a CBS show in the manner of CSI or Criminal Minds or NCIS. But as the season went on, there was just these layers of character development and a kind of very gradual but persistent layering in of mythology and themes and talking about artificial intelligence and corruption on the very highest levels. And I just wondered how you initially presented it to CBS, whether the network understood how complex you really wanted to go, and whether you really wanted that whole arc of the first season, whether you laid that out to them.
Yeah, absolutely. We felt from the beginning, I'm a big believer in you develop the idea, you figure out what it is, and then you figure out what the best home for it would be. To me, this was always a CBS show. For exactly all the reasons, I think you actually would have sold it much faster than I did. Explained it much more articulately than I did. But that was the idea. You look right now at the state of television, it's kind of an interesting place. It's not a million miles away from the film business. When I first started working in the film business, we had summer movies that reached a massive audience, and we had that kind of award bait at the end of the year. And I think what's happening in TV right now, network television shows, which reach a vast audience, but too often can become very, very staid, just sort of frozen in amber. If it's working, you want to just leave it there and let it sit for 8 years. But the flip side of that coin is you have all these amazing shows that are being made right now on cable, which are more of the novel-like serialized shows. But to me, the high watermark was always to be able to do both. And the idea of the show was to look at New York, 8 million people, and choose and tell a story each week, but to also tell this massive story. And I kept trying to pretend it wasn't about artificial intelligence in the early meetings, because I'm like, I don't know if anyone's going to, I don't know, we're going to slip that in there, we're going to sneak that past them. And then finally we got to a place where one of the folks that I was working with at the studio finally said, well, what's it really all about? I said, okay, here's what it's all about. It's all about the world right now, and the fact that things are about to get really weird. All these technologies that we have, that we've come accustomed to just in the last 5 to 10 years, when you look at the new iPhone and the things that it can do that you know about, and then the things that it's doing that you don't know about, that it's doing in concert with advertisers, with technology companies, the way in which you're being tracked, the way in which we have all entered into this giant cluster of information. And as we like to say with the show, we pitched it originally as science fiction, but the truth is we believe this show is, or we believe the reality is one firmware upgrade away from our show. That this is where the world is kind of heading, and we wanted a mechanism by which we could explore some of those questions. How far is too far? How much of an invasion of privacy are you willing to put up with to protect yourself and your family? So we get to play in all those areas in a really kind of fun way, and the more we lean into that, it seems like the more the audience responds to it, to the bigger benefit.
That kind of leads into a question I was going to ask anyway, which was, I mean, if this show was on FX or Showtime, these guys would be having Emmy nominations and wins. I just feel like to a certain extent, the satisfaction of, you are somebody who creates mass entertainment. You want the biggest audience possible for your entertainment. And you get that still on network television. This show reaches so many more people than Mad Men, so many more people than Dexter. And yet at the same time, as you're saying, the kind of prestige to a certain extent has switched over to basic cable and pay cable. And I wonder if, and also, the certain artistic license that you can take perhaps in language and violence and whatever you can show. And I wonder if that's ever a frustration.
I think it's very much the same approach that my brother undertook and then inveigled and roped me into coming along on this 10-year voyage that we just wrapped up last summer with the 3 Batman movies that we worked on. and someone said to me, I was having with a friend, and they said, "You're making a bad movie." And then there was a tiny, barely concealed amount of contempt in there. I'd grown up with Batman as a favorite character of mine, so I took umbrage at that. But what really bothered me was the idea that you had to have two things. That essentially, if you were interested in sophisticated or provocative questions, you had to turn your brain off for the entire summer and then turn it back on again and start going back to the movie theater in October. I just thought that was preposterous. I thought there's no reason why you can't have both, why you can't have a massive summer movie that asks, hopefully, provocative questions, that tells a compelling story, and that will allow you to work with actors who deliver, award-worthy performances. And that's exactly the same mentality we're trying to bring to broadcast television, which is this is where the big audience is, and why can't those shows be provocative, and why can't they ask interesting questions, and why can't they have the best guests on TV?
Choice Award. That's more important because it's all about the
We reached the time where we can take some questions from the audience.
I have a question for Michael. First of all, I'm a big fan of Lost. What intrigues you about the types of characters that you play that are kind of out there and kind of weird? And what you love about playing those characters and how they're similar to your own personality?
I don't think they're all that similar. But I tend to gravitate to characters that don't give it all up. I like a bit of mystery and a bit of ambiguity, and that tends to be on the sinister end of the scale, but not always. I think just a person you can't figure is possibly a danger to you. So even if they're a good guy like Mr. Finch, you still wonder about them. They're still a little troubling. I'd like to be the burr under the audience's saddle. That's a terrible metaphor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi. First I want to thank this woman who I'm sitting next to who let me take this question spot. So I think she should get like a round of applause or something. I'm really actually glad that Miss Actor is here because I really wanted to just, the relationship between Root and the parallels between Root and Finch I find really fascinating, and I just wanted to know what you both, in the scenes that you did, like how you worked with that and how, you thought about the ways that these characters interact, like their personalities, their motivations, technologically and socially.
Well, I think for Root getting to, it's kind of like this is her idol, which works out well, so if I sort of idolize Michael, isn't that true? but just getting to be with him and have that time, that one-on-one time with him, and then, he pretty much tells me to my face that he's nothing like me, and it kind of doesn't sink in. I still think he's gonna come back to me. I think he really misses me.
It's a lesson, because you don't always make wise choices in who you become fascinated with. And Mr. Finch, I think, was fascinated with Root up to a point. It was like a kind of courtship or something, until he saw her blow someone's brains out. So I think, once again, Mr. Finch is wounded or a little shell-shocked, and even that much less likely to form a romantic bond.
Thank you very much.
I think one of the key lines for Root was when she said, "I don't want to control the machine, I want to set it free." In that moment, I felt like the character of Root became a kind of anarchist figure. I mean, is that a good reading of the character in a sense?
Yeah, I think in a sense, I feel like the best villains are written when you have a certain a certain affinity and understanding for what motivates them, and what motivates them is something that in itself is kind of interesting. Ray Kurzweil has a book about artificial intelligence where he begins every chapter with a quote from a compelling play. There's one chapter in particular where the quote is so long that it runs over the page, so you don't see who the author of the quote is. And it's very compelling. It's about the society we live in, and how it's changing, and technologies, and emerging technologies, and how this may not be the right direction. And then you turn the page and you realize it's attributed to Ted Kaczynski, Unabomber. We feel like, again, the show, above and beyond that story of the week, is trying to dip the pinky into where all of this is going. And I believe it's going in very, very strange places. Some strange decisions are already being made. Every time you log on to Facebook, you're making a decision to share all of your personal information with a private company somewhere. So I think the most compelling villains, again, are the ones who are trying to shine a light on something that maybe is a hypocrisy or a tragic flaw of the heroes that they're attacking. I think the way that Root is articulated to Finch, the compromises that he's made makes for what we hope is a very compelling standoff between the continuum.
I think it's a very subversive show that way. I think it's one of the real great things about it. Yes?
My name is Romy from Massapequa, Long Island. By the way, you guys are all amazing in the show. I'm a big fan. Jim, I just wanted to know how it took you to learn that the command that you gave to the dogs. That was amazing.
As long as they're in Jake. He was satisfied. He settled for that answer.
I forgot to point out that Bear is now tweeting. But only in Dutch.
Yes.
Hi. You're all great. Amy, this is you. I didn't even know you were going to be here. But over the years, we've seen you do different characters, both good and bad, just flipping it around. But I liked your best when I saw you and Angel as both Fred and Illyria. Two things. First, is there anything from that experience you brought over to when you came up with Root's personality? And second, I really got to know, what was it like wearing that costume when you were Illyria?
Well, the costume was fun. It's always nice to wear leather and blue hair. So, I don't do that much in real life. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about the writing on that show and the writing on this show is just how good it is, and the humor that's it's hidden, and you kind of don't even notice that there's humor. And I think I don't know. I think having the switch in the first episode from being the psychiatrist to Root, it's sort of, I was able to pull from that Fred Illyria switch, but Illyria was not quite, she was a different kind of crazy than Root.